Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. My guest today is pretty much a neighbor of mine for half the year in Estero, Florida. And we're going to be talking about a conference at the other end of the country today, the Unconventional Ag Conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This 8th annual conference features the latest in regenerative, organic, and sustainable agriculture methods. From the Unconventional Ag Conference and the founder of Agromeris, I'd like to welcome Peter Golbitz. Welcome, Peter, and thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome, Chrissy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about your background.
Well, it's kind of well, it's certainly interesting in that I started in the soybean and agricultural area as a food processor. I actually had a small tofu and meat alternative company back in the 1980s in Maine. And that kind of led to a number of discoveries of and explorations of food technology and such. And then that moved into a consulting business once I realized that I couldn't get everybody in Maine to eat 2 blocks of tofu a day and keep me in business. So we were early. That was pioneering. And then, but over the years, I've been involved in a lot of the areas around utilization of soybeans directly for food, which kind of led me to organic and specialty ag and the other areas where there's a lot of value added in agriculture and then value added in food processing. And at the same time, much higher utilization of food directly for humans, which makes it a more sustainable agricultural system.
Yeah, okay, that's awesome. Can you tell me a bit about Unconventional Ag and why it was started?
Well, this is a great conference in that over the years, it has continued to evolve as the market needs evolve. So a number of years ago, this conference was started as the Organic and Non-GMO Forum, to focus on specialty grain opportunities for producers, also to help stimulate the interest among grain handlers and processors to be looking for and supporting this value added opportunity for farmers by paying higher premiums for organic and non-GMO. As the market has evolved and those markets have stabilized, and I mean, obviously there are still challenges within all those specialty areas. Uh, the uh, the increased use of soybeans and legumes and other crops directly as human food and new plant-based alternatives also began to pick up steam. And we've seen certainly the plant-based milk market evolve very quickly over the past 10 years. And in the past 3 or 4 years, plant-based meat alternatives have also exploded. And that's created a lot of opportunities for food processors, for consumers see these products, get these products. There's a pull then from the marketplace for processors to make these, which then there's a pull to producers to grow some of these specialty crops and such. And we're definitely seeing market shift. We're seeing higher demand for oats and for pea and for non-GMO soy, for example, as a result of that. Unconventional ag really is about opportunities outside of just conventional ag. This, conventional ag is primarily, our corn, soybean, wheat crops, and mainly grown for commodity markets. It's a large market, it's a stable market. But if you want to add additional value to your operation as a farmer or as a food processor, you kind of need to step into some of the newer emerging areas where consumers are willing to pay more. Food processors are willing to start launching these products and create demand. So it becomes kind of an unconventional ag. And we thought it was a nice play on words. We were adding this year a couple of specific focuses on plant-based products specifically and fermentation. And while precision fermentation is not agriculture per se, it is a new wave of agriculture in that we are growing organisms and proteins in fermentation vats. Now, whether or not you really see that as agriculture, the reality is it will compete with conventional agriculture. And so it's important to explore those. It's important for people to understand what is that all about and why is that market exists? How are these products made? Is it an opportunity for me or potentially a threat for me in some areas? So it's an interesting mix. We really want to bring together uh, producer discussions, processor discussions, consumer needs, consumer trends, and really, I think it's the only conference where food and ag cross over. It's kind of a hybrid event. It isn't just about precision agriculture, and it isn't just about food marketing, but it's a way of kind of touching the middle of the market, really where everything needs to happen in terms of pulling levers for more demand and pulling levers for uh, responding to consumer demand for food products.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I've never really thought about the fermentation industry being part of agriculture, but it just goes to show you that agriculture touches everything.
Yeah, we have to eat, and we want our
Yeah.
foods produced in a sustainable manner. And those of us who understand the food supply chain want all stakeholders to be rewarded well. And I think that one of the challenges today is consumers just don't understand what the producer goes through in terms of getting
Right.
crops to market, the risks that they take, and such. And so they need these value-added opportunities in order to help balance out, for those who want those opportunities. Not every producer is looking to break into new markets, but there are many who are looking for new ways of doing things and increasing the value of their farm and their family operation.
Right. Yeah. So that covers a lot. And if you were to just boil it down to a main goal of the convention, what would that be?
I think it's to bring together the disparate parts of the value chain, right from the producer right to the food processor. And that also requires a look at the ultimate consumer. So it brings those together to help facilitate the exchange, the networking, the development of that market, and to kind of help build and give it some strength.
Yeah, that's right. So what are you most excited about this year's show?
I think it's the actual. We're going to actually get into some sensory evaluation here,
Mhm.
and this is something we had done many years ago at some of the Soya Tech events, where we had a taste of soy presentation, where salespeople, product development people would get to taste different things and understand how to develop a common vocabulary around food taste and sensory evaluation. This year, we're having the Plant Protein Innovation Center, which is there in St. Paul at the University of Minnesota. They're going to do a session on evaluating chicken meat alternatives. So this is plant-based chicken products. And the idea is for those in the audience who might be investors, might be a farmer, they might be a food processor, to understand the challenges that are facing plant-based meats, what are good, which ones are better than others, the kinds of technologies that are being used, the kind of benchmarks that are trying to be reached, the challenges of reaching those benchmarks in terms of consumer acceptance. So we're going to have this great session from the Plant Protein Innovation Center. They're also doing another session on science around working with plant-based proteins. The Good Food Institute is doing a presentation on precision fermentation.
Oh,
And this is where yeast microbes and other microbes are altered in a way to help them produce what would have been, let's say, dairy proteins, like dairy whey and dairy casein, and even meat proteins that similar to cell-based meat. The idea is that these are technologies which, again, that they're not necessarily agriculture, but they're going to compete with agriculture. We have plant-based whey proteins now entering the market. Nestle just the other day announced they're going to be launching a product uh, on using plant-based or non-animal based whey, and so clearly it's going to compete with milk.
mhm.
There's other companies getting ready to launch products using similar ingredients. So again, we're starting. It's unconventional, but it's going to compete with agriculture. And again, is it an opportunity or a threat? Those are for individual companies and their food processors to kind of cipher for themselves and decide how they want to play in the space.
Right. That makes sense. And how many exhibitors are you expecting?
I think we're going to have about 15 or 20 altogether. This isn't a big exhibitor focused show. This
Right.
is really a content focused show. The exhibitors, it's great because last year's event, Obviously, there was a lot of pent up demand due to the event having been canceled. But the amount of the people that were there were intensely involved in discussions with each other. There was business going on the right there in the exhibit area. People were buying commodity and buying specialty grain. There was just so much pent up need to connect with one another. So these 12, there's 12 right now. I think we're going to have about 20 when we're all done. Those are suppliers, technology providers, equipment providers, and again, they're there to share. Well, they hear what the market's doing, but then also to share what they can offer to the marketplace.
Wow, that's great. And how much does it cost to attend?
I think it's $7.99 this year,
Mhm.
and that includes some great food too. I really am always impressed with the quality of the venue. It's run very well. It's in a great location in Minneapolis, which is a wonderful area, and a lot of people can end up driving there with coming from the Midwest.
Mhm.
But also, it's a real business center for food and agriculture in the U.S. You have a lot of food and agricultural processing companies located in Minneapolis. There's some great equipment suppliers there as well. Last year, we had a great tour from Bueller at their plant, their Food Processing Innovation Center. I forget the exact acronym, but they display all their equipment. They can do pilot plant work for companies, and they
Wow.
gave us a tour of that facility last year, which was very, very nice.
Well, that's good. And the food part is appealing to me. I'll be there as well. So I'm
Oh, that's
looking
great.
forward to the
Yeah.
food part. I was looking over the agenda and it's like lunch here and this food here, that food here. So I think that'll be really great. Not to mention the tours. And you'd said before that the Purist Innovation Center is opening their doors to a private tour. What are some of the main features of that tour?
Well, so Purus, it's an interest. They started off as a soy processor many years ago, and they evolved with the market, and now they became a leading provider of pea protein made from yellow pea.
Hmm.
Then they formed this venture with Cargill, and they've opened up a new processing facility right there, right outside the city. So we're going to get to go in. This is, I don't know how many public tours they give, but I don't imagine too many because there is proprietary technology there. But they're very proud of their innovation center there. It's going to be wonderful to get a tour, learn a little bit about how yellow pea is processed into protein products, not just powder, but also into these structured textural products now, which are in the marketplace. And I believe we're going to get to taste some products made with the purest proteins as well. So it's a great opportunity. If you are a food processor or want to understand where your crops go and how they're processed, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And in my opinion, there is no better caretaker of the land than a farmer. And there's a fine line between being a good steward and then just doing something for the sake of doing it, to look good on paper. So how do you think that producers should navigate that line going forward?
That's a great question. In fact, we have a speaker, Jake Legou, who's going to be talking about how farmers they don't want to be told what to plant. They want to be asked what they can do. And uh, farming, making decisions on the kind of crop to produce, how to produce it, uh, cover crops, how to harvest, how to take your grain to market. They're all very individual based on obviously the product being produced, but also the markets that are available to that producer. Not every producer has access to different markets. A lot of them are just all they can do is really grow corn or soybeans. But there are other farmers who can grow other crops and who also can grow value-added crops. Um, this the line for sustainability, the farmer needs to decide if they're going to be a commodity farmer using conventional farm chemical systems and sell, based on volume and such. Uh, That's one option, and many farmers that model works fine.
Mhm.
Others are concerned about the long-term sustainability of their farm, so they're concerned about soil health actually, and being able to build enough organic matter in the soil to withstand drought and even over rain situations and such. And so those farmers are taking a closer look at their farming systems, how to maintain those. The cover crops is a big initiative going on now, which obviously protects the soil in the winter. It reduces soil loss, but it's also a form of green manure in that they can plow it in, or it's nitrogen fixing, and it really helps with the next year's crop, even though it costs more to plant the cover crop at the end of their growing season.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of opportunities. It's got to be negotiated by the farmer themselves. It's really between the farmer, their family, and their neighbors to some degree. Because you'll find, for example, that there are clusters of organic production around the country,
Yeah.
and that helps to kind of build them. It means processors might invest in producing within that area or processing within that area. But also producers tend to be good neighbors to each other. And they want to help each other, and they can be mentors to each other when they have problems. But obviously, all farmers are concerned about sustainability today. How they address that, how it really becomes very individual on their location. It's different farmers in different parts of the country are going to have different solutions, and also what they can market, how they can keep their farm profitable. At the end of the day, the farm needs to be profitable if it's going to support a family or support a community. And so the farmer knows that sustainability is a key part of that. How they approach that is a very individual choice. There's many options out there for farmers to choose from.
Yeah, those are excellent points. And are there any key metrics that that would be helpful for producers to be looking at or to be striving for to really measure their success?
That's a great question, and of course, that means they have to set goals. Before, if you set the goal to increase your yield and produce 300 bushels of corn per acre, that's one metric, and many farmers go by that because it's about profitability. But at the same time, from a how many pounds of nitrogen did they put in the soil versus how many bushels of corn they got, there's some equations there that are all about just pushing the system to the max. But that is one metric. There are ways of measuring soil health, whether it's depth, whether it's percent of organic matter. There are soil scientists. In fact, one of the presentations at Unconventional Ag is going to be a soil scientist talking about healthy soils and their importance, how to build them, how to measure them, and such. So that's a big KPI. Regenerative ag, which is separate from the organic movement and organic certification, uh, is trying to set metrics for regenerative. In other words, so that farmers can see uh, sequential improvement over a number of years, and it validates that what they're doing is right. Gives them a measurement of success or failure or slip back, or try to understand. Okay, this past winter, this event happened, or these insects happened, and so over time they begin to understand some of the science in regenerative, and then the metrics used to gauge support. Organic is a great system. I think one of the weaknesses in organic production today is that you have to verify and be inspected, and it is a process function. Organic is a process, not a. There's no chemical testing done per se, but your process of farming is verified, and that you're using no prohibited substances and such. Unfortunately, along with that, there aren't any metrics for success in terms of regenerative and sustainability.
Right.
And so that's been kind of an Achilles heel of organic over the past couple of years, because the organic regulations are very challenging to change, because it is a USDA program authorized by Congress. So only Congress can authorize changes to it. That's not likely to happen easily anyway. So regenerative is a movement being supported by a lot in the private industry. And that's about trying to set some of these metrics as well. United Soybean Export Council has a metric they put together on sustainability, and you get a certificate on
Wow.
sustainability. So there are different methods out there. Nothing is unified at this point or perfect, but farmers who are interested in understanding how to get those, they're out there. They should start with their local ag extension or the USDA, and then look at some of these private organizations.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And as it, develops and gains these different ways to measure, I think it can only get better from here. And
Certainly.
for a producer in this climate where there's so much uncertainty with inputs, with, the whole world right now, change can be very scary, especially in a time like this. So what small steps can farmers do to try new things without a lot of risk?
Yeah, another great question. If you take a look at organic farming, for example,
Mm,
you'll find that the average organic farm is 50 to 100 acres. Now, that operation might be 1,000 acres, and they may have 300 acres of non-GMO, 500 acres of conventional, and 200 acres of organic.
okay.
Because that farmer has access to markets for those other crops, and thus they can kind of mix their operation up. It helps to hedge against a bad market, and also one of the particular crops that might be having a problem. Setting up the farm to invest in 50 or 100 acres of a different crop, as opposed to converting 3,000 acres over to entirely different. That's one great way of doing it. Looking at any other kind of diversification they can do on the farm, and it really has a lot to do with their objectives, also their access to labor. And that's becoming a big challenge on the farm, that these larger farms, which are needed in order to produce enough grain to be profitable. And we've gone from, I think, farms are getting larger in the 2,000 and 3,000 acre and up areas, 6,000 acres, because that's what's needed in that area to be profitable. And so you have a high degree of mechanization, but you also have a lot of labor that's needed. And, it's not like you have enough family members to help on a 6,000 acre farm. I think that might get maxed out at a couple of thousand acres. So access to labor is a challenge. So doing smaller things is a good way of trying things out. Um, and the specialty markets, for example, we know that there was an oat shortage last year due to the rapid growth in plant-based milks that are being produced with oats.
Mhm.
There's a shortage of peas due to some issues in China and Canada, and there's a high demand for yellow peas. So if a farmer takes a look at some of these emerging high value markets and tries 50 acres or 100 acres, that's probably the best way they can do it. And then also look at cover cropping and some other methods on a small scale, starting off, seeing how that works, and then being able to compare in the following season, one farming method or one thing they did to another.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great points. And now let's switch over to the general public. They're so far removed from the farm that they're very susceptible to believing misinformation about food. I've been in marketing my whole life, and I know that companies, especially food processors, they will create a message that is often misleading to sell a product. And, whatever that message may be. But what do you think as an industry, what we can do to move forward with the truth, right? What are some steps that we can do as an industry?
Good question. The one of the challenges, in the food and in the ag space,
Mm,
your communication with consumers is filtered through and managed by the consumer packaged goods company.
right.
And they're in a very competitive space in the marketplace. So, for example, in the consumer market, fear is a big motivator of sales, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't contain this, all that the free from labeling, whether it's GMO, whether it's uh, BGH, whatever it is that the consumer is concerned about, companies market to their fear and we'll put a product out there that says doesn't contain bovine
Exactly.
growth hormone or made with non-GMO.
Mhm.
Um,
Or
and it's,
eggs, gluten-free, right?
yeah,
Just silly
gluten-free
things.
water,
Yeah, that's it.
or organic water or non-GMO water.
Mhm.
It gets a little bit ridiculous. But what it programs consumers to do is respond to those claims,
Yeah.
and so that's where a lot of the misinformation is starts. And it's unfortunate. For example, non-GMO. Uh, Non-GMO, GMO crops are primarily corn and soybeans, and there's a couple other major crops. And then there are some vegetables and a couple of fruits out there that are GMO. But the vast majority of our food is non-GMO.
Right.
And when you see something like a non-GMO green bean, when there are no GMO green beans,
Right.
right?
Drives me
So
crazy.
yeah, and and again, they're marketing to consumers' fear, and they're also trying to maybe add value to their particular product by throwing this free from label on there. And that product was always free from that.
Right.
So that's where a lot of the misinformation starts. And then, of course, we're right now living in a time of conspiracy and misinformation everywhere and fear mongering, and it's really unfortunate. And of course, it's not like the ag industry hasn't made mistakes or hasn't, you know, uh, where there's been issues that the ag industry probably could have managed better. Uh, and so you have these PR issues, whether it's a contamination of a field or whether it's, a food poisoning event, or I mean, like a spoilage event or a contamination event of food. So there's a lot of information for consumers to kind of filter through and manage. I don't know how you educate consumer. I mean, I think what's lacking now, particularly in school, is the teaching of where our food supply comes from.
Right.
It doesn't come from a truck.
Yes.
And kids need to understand that. It would be wonderful if there could be, and I know it's hard, and you have so many people living in cities; they're not necessarily have close access to farms. But it'd be wonderful for kids to spend time on a farm and to understand where milk comes from, where wheat comes from, where vegetable oil comes from, where their meat comes from, all these things, and to understand how these systems work. It'll teach them how to have more respect for those systems because they're delivering something to them and they like what they're consuming,
Mhm.
and also connect them with, oh my goodness, there's a man here. I got to meet the guy who grew this. And if I just remember, for me, one of my first inspirations and excitement about food processing was I visited a Borden's dairy plant, I think in the second or third grade or something like that. And I was just blown away by, the cartons coming down the thing and this big machinery and hundreds of
Yeah.
cartons going out. And this is amazing. And seeing it go in those plastic tubs and seeing it put in a truck and go off somewhere. And I thought that was amazing. And I still get excited whenever I'm in a food processing plant and I see how raw material is converted into a food product, and how much energy and time, and how it takes a lot of energy to get that in that package.
Yeah.
In terms of product development and formulation and shelf life testing and quality control, and there's so much that goes into that, and it starts at the producer. And it'd be wonderful to be able to have more opportunity to teach children in particular. And I think adults, I think you've lost them by the time they're buying $6 lattes.
Right.
They just want their coffee or whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. And can you tell me about your own company, Agromeris? Tell me about what you do and why.
Agromeris was founded in about 8 years ago as a company to bring together, uh, to connect opportunities in food production and CPG, particularly around specialty areas, whether it's organic and non-GMO or just value-added soybeans, value-added corn. The
Mm.
idea was to make sure uh, that there was a nexus between all those pieces. We've been doing work for a lot of the large trade associations, large private companies. We've done some very good analysis of some of the issues around fraud in organic, for example, and help to expose some of the issues with some imports coming in from other countries that were damaging to the U.S. industry. So we've been big supporters of making sure that value is created and passed through to the stakeholders, including the producers. You had asked me about education on consumers on farming before, and I forgot to mention one thing. So the consumer who's buying the $6 latte. Now, I dissed that person, and I'm sorry. I happen to be one of those people as well. But people are buying oat milk, soy milk, coconut milk to go in those lattes because they are becoming aware of sustainability issues, and they respond to it in their particular manner. Whether it's truly effective or not from a large scale, who really know? It's just 3 or 4 ounces of milk. But believe it or not, the use of plant-based milks at the national coffee chains is probably the largest market for plant-based milks today. And so it is making a difference. The little purchases that we make creates demand. And I think consumers are now purchasing with a little bit more sensitivity about sustainability. They may not understand exactly how to define that, but they understand that they should be thinking about sustainability. They got kids, they have grandkids, right? The planet, we need to keep this planet sustainable for the next generations. And obviously there's a lot of challenges just around climate and other issues as well. So making little choices as people can, is they are doing that. So
very good point. Now, one last question for you. Why do you personally serve the agriculture industry? What's your greatest passion in all of this?
I think it is to create more food for humanity, to have, so that there's food justice, that there's enough food for everybody. I got in the tofu business. Why? Because I read this great book about how soybeans could be utilized for food and how over 90% of it went into animals, and that if people ate soybeans directly, we would increase the availability of soybeans to everybody globally, and there'd be enough protein. When I first started publishing the Blue Book, my forwards and my commitments were always about increasing the value of food in the human food chain, so that it was more direct consumption by humans as opposed to feeding animals to then feed humans, which, although might be tasty, it's an inefficient use of our resources. And as we look at 9 billion people on the planet in the next 20 to 30 years, we've got a lot of food that we're going to need to produce. And we need to make sure that there's food justice, that everybody on the planet has access to food. And that means maybe lowering some of the high-end stuff that we eat so that there could be more grain and more innovation at that level to make these products available and nutritious and delicious as well.
Right. Well, I think there's going to be some great conversations at the Unconventional Ag Conference, and definitely looking forward to that. Where can people go if they want to sign up?
I believe the website is unconventionalag.com. That's a good place to start. And there's information. The agenda's up there, some of the speaker bios, some descriptions of where the tour is going to be and such. So yeah, check it out. And we hope to see a lot of people there. Hope to see you there as well.
I will be there. So can't wait to meet you in person, even though we only live a half hour from each other most of the time.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining me. And
You're welcome.
And thanks to everyone else who's watching or listening. If you want to learn more, all the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, AgFuse channels, and the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Amazon, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And have a great day.